Well, howdy, folks. It's Mike again, and this is a special episode, very special for me. This is our 51st and a half, so 5150 in episodes, and I never planned on it being this long of a series, but I'm happy that it is, and I'm happy you guys are still watching, and I appreciate it. This is going to be something that's really near and dear to my heart, and, the big part of who I am, that we're going to be talking about a moral compass. So, as you can tell, moral compass really doesn't have anything to do with where to buy a stock or where to sell a stock. So if you're here for the stock stuff, I get it, man. This is a mainly stock-based podcast. And we've done 3 episodes that weren't directly related to stocks. That was one on fear, one on goals, and one where I went over my favorite books. And most of those were stock related, but not all of them were stock related. So there were 3 episodes that don't cover stocks. But if you're here for the stocks, man, just go to the channel Webby 5150. If you forget 5150, you can just say it on my shirt. But go there, find what makes sense to you, what you're interested in. We've got we've got things on my inventions, whether it was pattern rec, the growth 250, the composite rating. I think I did one on the 3-month RS and the 6-month RS, things that I invented, the IPO base. Then there's other ones on model books. That's where I would start. And I have one on how to build a model book, what a model book is. Basically, stock has had a huge move, and then studying each one. That's at the core of everything we do. And those are where you're going to learn the most. They're the most unviewed, the lowest viewership on those, but that's where you should learn. And I would watch those. And then, of course, we have the more popular ones like on the 21-day exponential, or my quicksand Grateful Dead, or of course the episodes I did, the hanging out series that I did with, you can think of them as like interviews, but it was really just, a couple dudes hanging out, talking. And I'm going to do a lot more of those next year. In fact, primarily my goal for 2026 is to do at least half of them as the hangout series, if not more, because I like doing them. And I think you guys will learn people, and I'm going to have the same people come back too as well, because I would like to just have more conversations, and you never know where those are going to lead. So, and there's a bunch of other things. I started doing patterns recently. I did a whole fundamental series on, what to look for. So there's tons. If you're not into this is not going to be about stocks. So again, if this isn't for you, don't put in the comments, why are you talking about this or whatever. I will shut you down, man. Like, I don't want to hear it from you. I'm telling you now, if this isn't for you, don't watch. Don't say anything negative. Just move on. If your mother didn't tell you, if you don't have anything nice to say. Exactly. So with that said, moral compass is terminology I got from Dr. Laura Schlesinger. Always butcher her last name, but Laura, Dr. Laura, I'm doing my best. I was a huge fan of her. Man, I don't think I've listened to her since I turned probably 30, but back when I used to commute a lot, I would listen to her radio show, and she was syndicated, but I would watch her on listen to her on KFI out in, I don't even know if they're still around, but I think it was AM 640. And she had this show. It was kind of like you call in with your problems or whatever. And she was a tough love type of lady, but she would always talk about a moral compass and about doing what's right. And that really resonated with me. And it's something that is, I think I've had it my whole life, is like, we're all kind of born hardwired to a certain extent, that you can change that, I believe, but you kind of have this bias of some people are super empathetic, some people aren't, some people are super aggressive, some people aren't, some people are true extroverts, some aren't. You got these hardwiring that you can alter, but you need to find a moral compass for yourself. Everyone's is going to be different. So I'm going to walk you through my moral compass and kind of how I gauge things. But that's just mine. It's a very personal thing. And it was going back and forth, like, do I really want to do this? And I was concerned about how it might be taken out of context if people didn't watch the whole thing or don't know me. You've never seen any of my other ones, so you don't really truly understand where I'm coming from. And I could see it taken the wrong way. But with that said, if this is your first one, I've done this podcast for two reasons. One, because I wanted a free outlet for me to provide info to folks that I thought that they needed, that some people can afford and some people can't. And I wanted everyone to be on the same playing field because, I started off with nothing. And, if you don't know my story, I talk about it in the, not the fear episode, maybe I think it was the goals episode. I probably touch on it on both, but I started off where when I came across the first stock I wanted to trade, this was in 1995, it was Robert Mondavi, and I had no money. I was out of college and I was barely making anything. I was working at T. Rowe Price, a mutual fund company, and it barely, I was driving 60 miles plus one way within a stick shift, into downtown LA, wearing a suit every day. It was a drag. Did that for like 5 years. And anyways, they just barely, I took every overtime I could, but it's still, I just could not make ends meet. So I just did not have any money. I was slipping backwards every month. So I didn't want to go backwards for my, and like take money out on a credit card to invest because I thought that just didn't make sense, psychologically too. Like now you're borrowing money to trade. It's a whole different thing. It's different than margin. But anyways, it took me 6 months of selling everything I had, including my cashing in my piggy bank from when I was a kid to my little savings account that I had, plus selling. The only thing that I had of value at the time was my music CD collection. I sold every CD that they would buy, and I raised $540 my first trade, and then as I life went on, I put more money in the market and stuff, and then I was able to grow it. And in 1999, I was in my personal account, I was up 1,640%, and I got noticed by Bill O'Neill, my mentor and idol as far as it comes to trading. Um, and I became PM for him, which was my goal, which is what you hear about in the goals episode, but that's kind of it in a nutshell. And it was a hard road. Like the only way that I can explain how hard that was to become a PM for him was if you have read David Goggins' book and you look in his journey of becoming a Navy SEAL. It was the only time when I read that, it was like I almost teared up. Well, I did tear up because I was like, wow, there's finally somebody out there that I can relate to that had as hard of a time, because lots of the stories I can't even tell for various reasons of how hard it was. But let me just tell you, this the only thing I could relate to is like, finally, like if you've read his book, then you understand it. And let me just tell you, I think if I sat with David and we traded stories, like real stories, if we could really get into it, he might even say that I had a harder time than he did. Like, so it was up there. It was harder. But anyways, like my favorite book ever is his two books. So his first one, Can't Hurt Me, is my favorite book. So it just get it, read it, listen to it. I would do the audio because the audio is a little bit different than the printed book. It's got some more interviews and stuff in there. And then his second book is really good, but his first book was just so good. It's hard to compete with that one. But anyways, really, really hard time. And so that was I don't know where I was going with that, but anyways, I think my point, I go off on tangents. My point was kind of, if you don't know me, my story was a rough one, to start with, and it's really been rough since, but in different ways. Sometimes personal life is a lot harder to deal with than squiggly lines on a chart that are a lot easier to figure out. But I the point with it is, it was so hard for me starting off that I wanted something out there for free for folks who were starting in a position like I had, that weren't a silver spoon kid, didn't just get breaks along the way, and it was really tough for me, and I didn't have money to buy books or to buy trading services or to buy anything. I'd go to the library at my lunch hour. The good thing was work downtown, and we had the LA library right next to us. And so at lunch, I would go across the street over there, and they had lots of cool things. They had these value line books, they had S&P tear sheets, they had, some ways that you could research stuff there. So that was a really good resource. So libraries are a good resource for folks if you don't. Libraries and now YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts, are really good free resources out there. And I wanted to provide a free resource. But really, the main goal for me or main reason for having these along with that was to have something for my kids if they ever decide that they want to get they're 24 now and they have their careers and trading isn't you know um on their path, and I don't think it will be, frankly, and that's fine with me. Want them to do whatever makes them happy in life. But when they have kids at some point, um and those kids grow up, I'm you know strong possibility I won't be around. And so I wanted to have something for them to learn from me because as I've told the story, I'm not at liberty to say who, but at some point, a legend in the market came to me and said, you know what, hey, my son should really learn how to trade properly. And would you teach him? The son didn't know that, but and this legendary trader was just too busy with stuff and legitimately busy and asked me, and I was like more than happy to do it. And like, but I would be happy to help anybody, frankly, but it was just an honor. And I always thought, wow, geez, being too busy to teach your kids, like that's not something that I want. And so I wanted a way of if they ever got interested, I never pushed them into trading. If they ever got interested, that I wanted to make sure that I was available. And I just thought, you know what, life can be very short, and I've had some health issues that have come up that have really make me think about that every day. And so it's like, God, you want to leave something behind. I was going to write a book, but the book takes so much time. And I thought, what, I'll do a bunch of videos and then put them on the cloud. But then I was really freaked out. I'm like, well, what happens if someone loses you hear about those stories about people losing their Bitcoin, files and stuff. And I'm like, wow, if that can happen there, it could happen here. Like I could lose if I burn them put them on a external hard drive or put them on the cloud or whatever, they can get lost. Passwords could get forgotten. Someone could forget to pay the bill for the cloud service. And then I could do thousands of or hundreds of hours worth of teaching my kids or really grandkids, and then it just poof goes away. And I didn't want to worry about that. I tend to be a worrywart. I'm trying to get over that, but it is what it is. That's how I'm hardwired to worry about things. And so I'm like, no, let me put this out. If I put it out on YouTube, that's not going to go away. I mean, the string of events that would have to happen for YouTube to go away would be very, very difficult. So that's why I'm doing it. And I figured, okay, it's dual purpose. I get to help people, which is something I love to do. And I have something documented for my grandkids, really. So when I do these and I kind of let my mind wander, and that's why it's called Webby Rambles On, because I don't, at work, I have to anytime I start going off on tangents, like I always feel everyone pushing me back or even cutting me off to just get back on. I get it, but that's not what this is. I'm just going to let my mind go wherever it goes. And then sometimes it just goes off and I forget where the point was. And sometimes there's something very valuable that comes out of it. And so I'm talking as if I'm talking to my grandkids, decades from now or years from now, most likely decades. So that's where, if you don't understand why in the world would he be doing a moral compass thing on a stock show, that's what this for. This is really for my grandkids to listen to when they're old enough to understand and probably to explain why they're vegetarians, because most likely they probably will be raised vegetarians. And that's part of my moral compass. And I don't push that on anybody else. Your moral compass is your own thing, but not push on anybody else. I would think that most likely they will follow in the footsteps of my kids who I raised to be vegetarians. And I'll get into why, but it's just one aspect of a moral compass. It's the easiest way to explain what a moral compass is. I'm not saying that anyone needs to be a vegetarian. I don't expect to change anyone's mind, and I'm not trying to change your mind. I'm trying through this is to let you know that if you can find your own moral compass, it'll keep you. I mean, what is a compass, right? Is a compass is to keep you going in the right direction. It doesn't mean you're not going to make a step wrong here or there, but to keep you going in the right way and to know which end is up and what is the right thing to do. And if you have a strong moral compass, you never even have to wonder because the right thing to do is just obvious. But if you don't, and if you never put time into thinking about your moral compass, then it becomes cloudy. And I see this with people because I'm very observant. I really pay attention to people because I find it fascinating. I mean, psychology I find very fascinating. I wish I would have double majored at an econ degree, but I wish I would have gotten either a minor in psych or some degree in psych because I find it very helpful for the market because the market is just mass psychology. That's all you're doing is you're just observing mass psychology in what the indexes are doing or the stocks are doing, and you're trying to gain an edge with that of understanding it. And so I really like psychology, and I pay attention to what people do, what they say, and I pay attention to everything. And especially when it's not important and you can tell someone's moral compass. Like I have an idea of everyone's moral compass that is in my circle, my daily circle of people that I'm around. And that's why I have certain admiration for certain people because I really pay attention to their moral compass. Like a really good example would be like Justin, who I work with. I mean, I refer to him the saint now that he's a grandpa. That he made it to a grandpa before me, so I'm a little jealous of that. A lot jealous, but happy for him that known him since 1998, and I've paid attention to everything he's done, and I've never seen him do anything wrong. And with that, I'm not saying everything he's done is right, but never a wrong thing, like something that was like the immoral thing to do. And that's about all I can say for like people who are not family members. Like, that's why I really pointed it out and refer to them that way. And so you observe, and then I see other people that I learned so much from because they act like a saint, but they're like the polar opposite of a saint because of everything they do. So I really pay attention to those people as well. So you can learn a lot. So the first thing you can do with a moral compass is start paying attention to people all around you, what they're doing when people don't think they're looking or paying attention. What decisions are they making and why are they making those decisions? And they could be very simple things so dishonesty is probably the easiest sign of someone that is lacking with a moral compass. And especially if they do it for something very small, like someone who does it for a very small gain, you've got to really wonder if there's a large gain, what would happen there. So I know a person who a coworker from a long, long time ago, and they went to lunch with them and they claimed that they forgot their wallet and said, "Hey, could you buy me lunch?" And I'm like, "Hey, you know what? It's just easier if I just lend you $20 and just pay it back to me, whenever." So I thought nothing of it. $20, no big deal. Fast forward maybe 6 months, the person never got around to it. I thought, no big deal. Like they just forgot, like they just forgot about it. Like it wasn't intentional. It was all other signs where this person was, honest person. And so I said, "Oh, hey, just like last time, I'll just give you another $20. You can just pay me 40 when you get time." Well, never saw that 40. And so that's okay. No big deal. It's $40 in the scheme of things. Now, $40, 3 decades ago would have been a big deal. But at this point, it wasn't a big deal. And I just thought, wow, what a sad thing to do to for this person to lie. Like clearly the first time maybe an accident, but the second time, man, like I reminded them like, oh, you can just give me 40. Like, so it's little signs like that. You could go, okay, well, it's only $40, but what if there was like real money on the line? If they would lie about that or be dishonest about that and claim like, oh, they didn't have their, you know, the Apple Pay or didn't have any way of paying you back, that, it's like you just wonder. So it's like those are two extremes. One, that you're paying attention to like someone who always does the right thing, and then someone else who everyone would think would do the right thing, but when they could get away with it, they got away with it. And so that's just, I don't know. I hadn't thought about either of those ahead of time or really what I was going to say, but I just, those are your two polar opposites. So, moral compass, what is important about that? It's to make sure that you don't go down the wrong path because, I've noticed people who have like made one bad mistake, one lie, and then before you know it, they get themselves into really deep trouble by lying on top of lying on top of lying. And if you have that moral compass, is going to keep you from going down that path because you're going to have this feeling like, wait, I'm doing the wrong thing. And check with yourself on a daily basis and just go, okay, well, did I do everything right today? The answer is going to be no. You always make mistakes. Go, what could you do better? What could you do differently? And was there anything outrageous that you need to apologize for? So I got in the habit maybe, I don't know, 6, 9 months, maybe a year ago, of really I tend to be overboard with stuff. So I took that overboard and I'm like, oh, if I screw up, I'm going to apologize to everyone, anyone who heard it. Oh man, that was a mistake. Because like I would just get in this thing. I'm like, oh, I don't know if this person heard my apologies. So then I'd apologize. I'd be like, I messed up and said this thing and you might have heard, and it was just silly. So I tend to take things to extreme. Then I realize, it was a little overboard, Mike. So maybe like dial it back and apologize where appropriate and the appropriate level. And sometimes you don't really have to apologize. You just got to make sure you don't do that thing again. We might as well get into the example of my moral compass and kind of where it started. I was, again, this is not about stocks. I'm not going to turn it into stocks. I have no intent to. So if this isn't for you, man, you don't feel like you have to watch. I just don't want to hear any negative comments. I'll do another stock one next week. If you've watched all other 51 episodes, man, thank you. But you could rewatch one of the stock ones. So I started off in life, in a very Roman Catholic family, very, very religious family. I think that was very important, but you're just born into it. I could have been born into a Jewish family, into a Muslim family, into a Hindu family, into a Buddhist family, into an atheist family, into an agnostic family. It's like you're just born into that's not your moral compass. That's just like your skin color. It's just something that happens, right? But it's not something you've picked. But for me, it was a good foundation because we never missed a Sunday. We never missed a holy day. And for a while, I was an altar boy, and I had a fine experience with that, no issues, but I'm aware of other people who've had issues. And that's just terrible. It's more than terrible, but I don't want to get off on that tangent. And want to keep this for families. So, because it's important to me for my grandkids, to be able to watch this at any age. So, anyways, and then I went to a Catholic all boys school, and in each one of those years, we had a religion class, and in those, we one year we had to learn about all the other religions, and in learning that was really fascinating for me because at the heart of most religions were kind of the same core principles, but then you step back from it and you go, wow, probably more people have died over the centuries and thousands of years over religion than anything else because people are arguing that no, it's my way, no, it's my way, and no, you hurt these people, so I'm going to hurt your people, and then it never ends, and there's never true forgiveness or moving forward together, which is really sad, and that's a big problem that no one person could fix, but you could at least be part of this, more part of the solution than part of the problem, right? And again, the moral compass will help you in being not creating more of that fighting that happens with people. And you've got to understand, like, you know, the terrible things that each side does, and why people feel that way. I mean, it's totally understandable, but you always have to step back and just go, okay, well, where is this going to get us? Um, and that's a big topic that no one's going to have a solution for. But uh, we know what's not going to work. Doing what we've been doing, because there is not peace in the world. So our end goal is right peace in the world at some point in the future. But just getting a little bit closer there, doing our part is all you can do, right? You can't change what other people do. You can only change yourself. So, anyways, through probably learned the most in that one religion class where the priest was, really wanting us to learn. And I think, I learned about Buddhism and Hinduism and some other ones, and, all of them in there, but those were the ones that I wrote about. I was like, wow, that's like this from this really makes sense. This from this makes sense. But, even going to church all those years, it was for me like any kid is like, oh God, man, when is this over? I want to go home and do whatever, anything else other than this. And, sit down, stand up, kneel, all these rituals didn't make any sense to me. And I realized it was important to some people, but it wasn't important to me. But what I did like, and I did pay attention to, were the sermons when they were good. And you could get a lot from that, from a good priest who was talking and explaining. And the one that probably always resonated the most with me was the Good Samaritan story, which I won't get into. But if you're interested in it, just Google it. And that was the one that really kind of hit home of, in a nutshell, helping those who need help, regardless of who they are. And so that really got me thinking, you're trying, if the real message between any religion kind of boils down to, most religions, the golden rule, right? Treat others the way you want to be treated. And then I was like, okay, core principle there that is similar through the most different things is to treat others the way you want to be treated. Like, I don't need to kneel and sit down or, do whatever for me to live that, to treat others the way I want to be treated. And so that's kind of was a lot of my path, was just being kind. That's where you see, in all my episodes, I ask people to be kind to somebody or something as part of the episode, payment for the episode, because I'm just trying to get people in the habit of just doing something kind, because we're all wrapped up. We all have our own problems. Trust me, I got so many problems. It's not even funny, man. Like, I don't even know how I'm in the problems, that my personal issue problems that I'm in, but it is what it is. And so you can get wrapped up in that and just be like, oh, I don't have time to be nice to someone else. But you know what? Those people are dealing with things that are probably worse than what you're dealing with. And you being nice to them might just make this positive change in their life, or it might just help them through a really, really tough day. So that's why I'm always saying at the end of every episode to be kind. Occasionally I'll be so tired that I forget to say it at the end, but I think it's implied. So that was kind of the one part of the moral compass. The other part was, I guess, the best example, and I haven't told this story since I told it to Bill, um, would have been maybe 23 years ago or so. So I was in his office I shared an office with him from 2000 to sometime in 2002 or three. Um, and during that time, sometimes it was just the two of us, and then Chuck was in there for a bit, and then there was this other PM who came in, Wendy, who we were very good friends, and we shared an office. And at this particular time, it was during the 2002 bear market, and we were in cash. So we didn't have any positions we had to manage. We were waiting for a follow through day. And so it was kind of a slow slow day and we kind of in between projects. And so we had a little bit of downtime, which was very unusual. And so Wendy asked me with Bill there, we were all just chit chatting about life. And it was normally about the market or projects or whatever, but just chit chatting. And she said, because everyone knew I was a vegetarian, and they said, oh, well, why are you vegetarian? I'm like, it's a long story. Trust me, you don't want to hear it. And they're like, no, no, it's fine. I'm like, you sure you want the long version? And so I started telling the long version. And this is the last time I told the story because midway through, Bill just tuned out. I saw it in his eyes. He tuned out, very disrespectful. And about 5 minutes later, he walked out while I was still talking. The most important story to me. And he just got up and walked away. And I made a mental note of that too. Like, wow, I wouldn't do that to anybody, frankly. That's just me. But so I stopped telling the story after that because I realized it's really long and it's boring. And there's a reason why people tune out. And they're not going to become a vegetarian. They don't care. They're already like, oh, that guy's wacko. And so I'm going to tell it again, probably the last time, maybe 23 years from now. Somehow I'm still around. I'll tell it again. But this goes back to, and I don't want to hear stories about how to make it shorter and whatever. I don't want any constructive feedback on this, please. Just don't say, if you don't have anything nice to say, I don't want to hear it. My idol walking out on me telling the story is enough enough for me to take. So this really goes back to when I was living in Virginia with my folks, and my dad took me to go fishing for the first time, and I was in fourth grade, and we went fishing. I didn't catch anything. I think he caught a what do you call this? One of those catfish, and I think he put it back or whatever. And then he went to training. He was a Marine, and he was gone for a little bit of time. And during that, somehow I went fishing. I don't. It must have been fishing by myself in a little pond or something, because I was by myself, but it was a different time and everything. And so I went fishing, and I caught this little bluegill. This, if you don't know what a bluegill is, like this big, kind of thin from what I remember. And I caught it. I was so excited. I'm like, oh, because he would used to fish with his father and his brother, and they would do that was as a sport, but they would do that. That's how they would eat, because my grandfather was a truck driver, so he, obviously didn't make that much money as truck drivers didn't back then, and so they would hunt and fish for their meat and their fish. I mean, that was what they did. Like, I know people do it for sport and everything, but that's what they did. It was completely different than just doing it just because you want to take a picture, killing a lion or something, or a giraffe, or some of the other, nonsense that happens. And completely understandable in different time and a different place and different finances. And anyways, so this bluegill that I caught, I felt so bad about it though. Like I was excited, and, I brought it home, and my mother supposedly wrapped it in aluminum foil, put it in the freezer. And I'm sure if they're listening to this, they're like saying that I've got the story all wrong, but this is my memory of it. Or maybe they don't even remember it. And put it in the freezer. And then when my dad came home a few weeks later, or whenever it was, took it out, and we had this feast, right? Like all these fish fillet type of things, off of this one little bluegill. So now, as an adult, I realize what had happened. But at the time I was like, wow, this fish really, um, fed a lot, a family of four. But anyways, I always felt so bad about that. No one told me to feel bad about it. And it's just still not normal, to feel bad. But I was like, what right did I have to take the life of this fish? And it just always bothered me. And it was rattling around in the back of my head. And granted, I was in fourth grade, right? So fast forward a year, and we moved out to California, and we were renting a house, and we had all our stuff, including the gun that my father had as a kid. That, whenever I'd go over to my grandmother's house, Grandma Arlene, she would, my favorite thing there was to go in the gun cabinet and look at the guns that I was going to get to have when I was of age. And there was this one gun that my father was going to give me, and then we were going to get to go hunting and stuff. and it was just like a rite of passage, and it's just something that was going to happen. But as fate would have it, I was a fifth grader. I was walking home from school, and I was the first person to the house because my parents were still working. And go in, the front door is cracked open. Someone had broken in, and I go in there as a little fifth grader, like, get out of my house, like silliness, until I realized like they could still be there, and I'm a fifth grader. What am I going to do, to someone who could break a door in half? I don't know how they did it. Or it was like cracked in half. And so I run back out, and then neighbors call the police or whatever, and as it turns out, the gun was stolen along with basically everything else that we owned. So as they were going through deciding like what to buy back with the insurance money, and like, okay, well, we can't buy everything back, but we could buy this and this and this. They asked me like, because it was getting closer to the age that I was going to be old enough to have that gun that was stolen. Do you want one? And it's like, oh, we can get the other stuff first. And it was always like it was going to get put off because money wasn't just growing on trees. And my dad would always say to me, like, because I think they must have picked up on, even though I never talked about this, and there was a little different with my empathy level, that I'm just a hyperactive empathy. Like I just feel bad for others, and, just said, are you sure that you're going to be fine with hunting? And I never put two and two together. I was like, okay, the rule was we're going to start with squirrel, and then we're going to work our way up to deer, and and I never really thought through. It was just like, oh, this is what my grandfather did with my dad, I'm gonna get to do it with my dad. And one thing led to another. I was like, okay, now I was 18, I was in college, and it was getting close to 19, and I started thinking about this. I'm like, oh wow, this is about the time, like, we're gonna have to go and do this. I'm like, I still feel bad about this freaking little fish that I killed that didn't need to be killed back in when I was in fourth grade. I'm like, wow, do I really want to kill a squirrel? They're so cute. Like, but I'm like, at the same time, I'm eating a burger at In-N-Out, one of my favorite places. And, you know, uh, it was a what was it? Double double animal style, man. Dude, like life doesn't get better than that. Or sometimes every once in a while I'll splurge and have a 4x4, four patties, four cheeses on this gluten bun. And oh my God, it was so good. But I'm like, wait, so a cow's okay. And this is where the moral compass comes in. I'm like, okay, cow's okay to kill in a factory, but I'm uncomfortable killing a deer or a squirrel. That didn't make sense to me. And the one thing I try to not be is a hypocrite in life. I'm like, I couldn't square that. And so I put deep thought into it, not talking to anybody about it, but for like 6 months. And that's all I thought about. I was, freshman in college, going into sophomore, and I didn't know another vegetarian. If I knew one, I really didn't process it too. I didn't even know it was a thing. I just knew that it bothered me and my moral compass, and I didn't even know the term moral compass yet, but I knew it just bothered me. I was like, I don't want to be a hypocrite, and I don't see that, like, okay, I'm going to cherish my dog, Thunder at the time, um, eh, and I'm gonna cherish my dog, and I'm gonna think dolphins are super cute, and giraffes are cute, and lions are cute, and of course, horses are cute, but it's okay for a pig and a cow to kill those because they're not as cute, or they're somewhere else on the food chain. And like, I couldn't square that, like I just could not make sense out of that. I'm like, how are they different? And I still cannot figure out how they're different. I know how people perceive them as different, but on a personal level, I couldn't see them as different. So I just made the decision there. I'm like, wow, this is going to really suck. But and my favorite meal was ribs, which, like, what could be more, like you're eating a rib, like a rib from your rib cage. And there was Joey's Barbecue out in Chino where I grew up, and it was my favorite place to go for like birthdays and stuff. Man, and I loved, contrary to what people think, I loved the taste of meat. Like I loved it, Never really cared much for fish, But meat, I loved it, and even chicken and turkey and stuff like that. But I couldn't figure out that. And so my moral compass told me that if I couldn't kill an animal myself, how could I allow someone to raise it in captivity in a little factory, And, I'd seen some stuff online of it, like the factories where they kill them and all that stuff. And boy, that'll change you. But that's not what did it, because that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. When I saw that, I was like, oh, yeah, can't do that. But again, I'm not trying to change anyone. This is just an example, my example of my moral compass. And so I thought, okay, I don't want to be a hypocrite. I hate hypocrites. I hate me being a hypocrite. If you want to be a hypocrite, more power to you. Just for myself, I don't want to be a hypocrite. So, and I can't see the difference between a dog and a cow. They're just both animals, and they're both, like, oh, what, I'm going to kill this other one because it's not as smart, or supposedly not as smart. And I think now we realize how smart pigs are, and other animals that people eat. And, anyways, so I stopped, and that was hard, man, because I got made fun of. I mean, even though I was living in California, it was not a popular thing. Like now, it's like being vegan and vegetarian is like, in vogue, and it's cool, and all the young kids are that way. And hey, that's great. But I think they're just doing it just because it's a trendy thing to do, which is the point of a moral compass, is that it isn't determined by the year or the century. Because for me, it was like, this is wrong for me. Don't judge. That's a very important part, because you got the PETA folks out there who go and they'll like wreck people's, someone's wearing a fur coat or something. They go throw paint on it. Like, dude, you're hurting the cause, man. No one wants to see that. One, this person spent a ton of money on this thing. It's their choice to do it. And you don't have to go and buy that stuff. Don't go ruin someone's property because of your point of view. That's just your point of view. They have a different point of view. Respect their point of view. And so that's what I do. I respect it. But, but people didn't respect my point of view, man. I had it from everyone, and especially the most religious people. Was in the Bible, it says to do this. Like, dude, don't go there with me, man. Don't go there with me. But they would, and then I even had coworkers buy me books and stuff about how when, the plants and stuff are impacted by death. And I'm like, yeah, if I could find a way to only eat, lettuce and fruits and vegetables and nuts and things that just fell off the tree, I would, but it's not practical, right? So I'm doing, my thing, for myself, of trying to, one, not be a hypocrite, be able to live with myself at the end of the night going, okay, well, I didn't eat, an animal or something. And then two, uh, just trying to reduce the demand for the product, because most of the meats that we eat, that most people eat, are things that are grown, like, let's say you go to McDonald's, like, those cows were grown in captivity. I grew up in dairy farmville. So, and knew a lot of dairy farmers and things, like, so I know what I'm talking about to a certain extent. They grow up in captivity, and then they go over to the next farm, and then they just live there, and then they're processed, right? They're killed. And that's not a life. They've been in jail their whole life, and then they get killed. And then, and along the way they have babies, and then their babies are taken from them and they're killed. Like, like, think about it. Like, does that make sense? And I have a lot of hunter friends that I do respect. A lot of my close friends are hunters, and I can understand that, because at least for their moral compass is fine, and so they're not being hypocrites. They're going out and they're shooting the stuff, and they're going through the whole process and everything. And hey, like, dude, I don't have any ill will or bad feelings towards them. It's like, that's not me. Like, I've got to live by my own rules, my own moral compass, but don't tell me that what I'm doing is wrong. So there's a very important part of it, is to not, you can explain to people why you're doing what you're doing, but putting them down or telling them that they should do it your way, I don't buy it. either end of that. Don't tell me it, and I won't tell it to you. I'm just explaining this to you because this was kind of how that whole thing went about, and it was like, goes back to the Good Samaritan story that I would hear from the priests of, the ones that can't speak for themselves. And those are the animals or the fish, or even, in our house, like the insects, like I buy these contraptions from Amazon. So there's the other day, there was a lizard in the house, and my better half is screaming, I'm in the shower. I've got soap in my eyes. This was on Monday. And I've got soap in my eyes. I hear her screaming. I'm like, oh, I know it's an insect, So I'm like, I get out and they get the little contraption, and I find the lizard, and I, put him in the thing so he doesn't get hurt. And then I take him outside because we got woods behind us. So we get a lot of, we get some frogs that come through, and, all sorts of things, and some snakes around, and never a snake in the house, but right outside of it. But, so I just do my best to not kill them. I've told the story before. One day I had like 3 flies in my office, and they could not think because they were making so much noise, and I spent 20, 30 minutes just getting them out of my office without killing them. Because, like, why? Just because I'm bigger? Like, to me, that's a bully action. Just because you're bigger than someone just taking its life, like, that just doesn't make any sense. There's times when it's going to be avoidable. You're driving your car and it's going to hit bugs, and I feel terrible about it. There's only so much you can do. If you want to take it to an extreme, you can just not drive, not be in a plane or anything, but still the food and stuff that you're getting is going to come from planes, and like, you have to put some levels on there. And I'll read the ingredients on everything that I get, and I ask a million questions at restaurants of like, is it truly vegetarian or whatever. And I'm not vegan because I still eat a little cheese, but that's just me. I don't eat any of the other stuff. So that was when I was 19, and I'm what, 54 now? So that's a long old time in doing that solo, and really, really getting, but there was never any encouragement from anyone along the way. And I did, raise my twins to be vegetarians, but I told them, like, once you're old enough, and I figured around 15, 16 was old enough, you can make your own decision. And they, to this date, have chosen to remain vegetarians. Now, if that changes, then this episode probably won't make much sense for those grandkids, because then they probably wouldn't have been raised vegetarian. But I think that it's not going to change. So therefore, they're probably going to be raised to be vegetarians. And so why this episode is here, so my grandkids can understand when you're getting made fun of in class for why you're the kids who are vegetarians, why it is, where it came from. It came from your grandpa, who was just born with too much empathy, who would feel bad about anything, hurting anything. Like the old saying is like, you couldn't hurt a fly. Well, that's me, and I really couldn't. And that's just how I roll, for better or worse. Now, there's a lot of worse in there, because people who pick up on that take advantage of it. And that's where my personal life issues have been a problem, because, I've got to find some balance there from not getting taken advantage of by people who will hurt a fly, hurt anything. They'll get them 1 inch. They would take you back 10 miles to get ahead by 1 inch. And I've run into my fair share of those folks, as some of you probably have too. But I won't mention their names here, um, because I'm take the high road. But you know who you are, and I have heard that some have watched. So, anyways, I find it hilarious. But be a better person. So with that said, this was I did jot a couple notes to myself, something I never do. Screw it. I'm not going to even read them, because the whole point of this is just kind of be off the top of my head. So the point of having a moral compass. So we started off by, explaining my moral compass, which is going to be completely different than your moral compass. The importance is, if you have something, and that was just an example, that then told me, like I was able to have this question in my mind for 6 months of deep thought when I was 19 to go, you know what? My moral compass tells me that I can't do any of that. I can't have any meat, fish, poultry, whatever, what have you. For me, that's my moral compass. But in your moral compass might have not a darn thing to do with animals. You might be totally fine saying, you know what, hey, that's fine for you, veggie Webby. But I'm gonna go eat my steak. But what I'm really concerned with is this other thing in life. And so what you really want to think of is at its core, the golden rule to treat others the way you want to be treated. So with every decision you're making, just go, okay, if I was on the receiving end of that, how would I feel about uh, about that? And then act accordingly. And that kind of that solves everything because everyone will have all these weird variations on questions. And like I said, I would listen to Dr. Laura, and it was, kind of a people call in with their problems with their spouse or their wife or their kids or their parents or what have you. And once you got the gist of it, was like just doing the right thing was the answer, or at least the answer she would give. And for the most part, that's kind of your answer for things. Any dilemmas that you have that you're struggling with, just think, put yourself on the receiving end and do that thing. Now, that doesn't mean life is going to be rosy for you, because trust me, it's not. Like if I'm any, you know, me doing the right thing has cost me tens of millions of dollars, frankly, but it is what it is. I can live with myself at night, and it's just one of those things of you've got to be able to live with yourself and the decisions you make. Now, I know people who would, lie, steal, and shield just to get ahead by, $40. That's not me, and so you've got to ask yourself, where is your comfort level and what keeps you up at night and what should keep you up at night? Like if you're, taking advantage of people or, hurting people in any way, shape, or form, you gotta fix that, because just because you can and you can get away with it doesn't mean that it's the right thing to do. I mean, deep down inside, you've got to know what the right thing to do is. And now I don't think some people do. It could be how they were raised. It could just be that they were raised by like, hey, do whatever you need to do to get ahead. And, it's a dog eat dog world. And Norm would tell us, some of us are wearing milk bone underwear, but you want to know what the right thing to do is. So always be thinking about it. So at the end of the day, just think back and go, okay, well, what did I do today? And what could I have done differently? And who did I negatively impact? And how can I fix that tomorrow? And how can I resolve that? So I hope this made some sense. I know it was a lot of babbling on, but again, I just wanted to have this for my grandkids to watch, and it's kind of like a time capsule. So I hope you guys are super cute. I hope you have really cool names, and you should be named after musicians, because that is the law that I set down for your parents and how I named them. And we'll just say some really cool names in there. But my kids are very private, so that's as much as I'll say, other than they were named after really cool people. So, go and be kind to something, somebody, some insect, just do that on a regular basis. Find your path of knowing what is right in the world, and you're not always going to be rewarded for it. I'm just telling you the truth. And lots of times you'll become the target, because you'll become the easy person, because people know, okay, this person is going to do this, because it's kind of the biggest tell out there. Like if you're playing poker with someone and they're kind of erratic, sometimes they do this. Sometimes they go all in with a 2-7 offsuit. Other times they fold, pocket kings or something like. But that's someone you don't know how to go against. But if you go against a person who's always going to go all in on aces and they're going to fold their 7-2 offsuit, well, then um, you know how to exploit that. And that's what happens when someone knows you're going to do the right thing. They figure out ways to exploit it. So be careful, watch yourself. You don't have to be a sucker. along the way just to do the right thing. Do the right thing, and at the end of the day, you'll know what the right thing is if you focus in on your moral compass. So just think, do you have one? And if you don't have one, put just deep thought into it each day. Spend 5 to 15 minutes a day just thinking, okay, what is the right thing to do in this situation? Okay, who does that impact? If I were them, how would I feel? And just go through that, and I think it will help get you on the right path. And with that said, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. If anyone at all watched this episode, I'm very grateful for you. Um, Thank you, and I hope you got a lot out of this. Well, pardon the interruption. Recorded that last night, and then I was thinking back. I'm like, "Oh, I left so many things out that I had wanted to put in, and honestly, if I've added everything back that I had forgotten about it would be another hour long. So I boiled it down to two things that I wanted to add into this before I start my work day and I don't get a chance to put this in there. So the first thing is to test your moral compass, a tool that you can use to just see if you've figured it out or not. And again, it doesn't have to be about my moral compass, your moral compass, whatever you believe is right and in wrong. Because think about a compass is timeless. It will point north regardless whether this was, you're living in 1955, you're living in 1865, you're living in, 2000 years ago or 20,000 years ago. It's going to point in that direction. It's not like a weather balloon, right? Or one of those weather things that you see at an airport, like a weather sock, where the wind is blowing into it, and then it tells you which way the wind is blowing, right? That is what's popular now. That's like what folks do in DC or in Hollywood, or you test things out and you see with the current folks what people like, and that's how you want to separate the two thoughts, is just say, okay, is this something that's acceptable now that could be wrong and immoral to your moral compass, but it's just perfectly acceptable in time. So you can test this out just thinking back again, like, get in that DeLorean, go 88 miles an hour. If you don't know what I'm talking about, man, I feel sorry for you. Go watch Back to the Future 1, 2, and 3. You can thank me later. But, and you go back in time and just go, okay, would, would I think these things are acceptable? I mean, think back to, just like I said, like 1955, what was going on in parts of the country, or even in all parts of the country, but more so in like in the southern area. Um, would that pass your moral test? It was completely acceptable. So a weather, again, a weather sock, you don't need a weatherman to tell you which way the wind is blowing, so to speak. Like a weather sock would say, oh, it's fine. But your moral compass would tell you that just because everyone else is thinking this, doesn't pass your moral compass test. Take that, go back, 100 years before that, prior to the Civil War. And just depending on where you were happen to be born, if you were born in the South or the North, like that shouldn't dictate your moral compass, right? Where your family is located, you should have your moral compass and you should know what's right or wrong. Now, then you transfer that back hundreds of years before that over in Europe or anywhere around the world, and you would see the things that are going on and just go, wow, God, that's just, everyone's down with this, right? And certain things have been in existence for, again, I'm trying to keep this family friendly, but certain things have been in existence for all of time. It doesn't make it right, right? It's just that sometimes it's very acceptable. So I say that because, like, with my moral compass and coming to my conclusions, like, I was out on a limb, and I'm less so now because it's popular to be a vegetarian and all, but, or vegan really is the thing to be, but which I totally get and behind, but everyone's got to make their own decisions. But, I was off on my own island there for, a decade plus. Like, really, maybe I'd come across a handful of people that were also vegetarians over that time. But at least in my circle, I was alone and I was very comfortable. If you believe in what you believe in, you're not going to get swayed. And I would always tell folks, I'm like, okay, give me $1 billion to eat a steak, and I'm not going to eat it. Like, you have it. That should be the question to you. It's like, is there an amount of money that would get you to move that moral compass or not? And if you have strong convictions in whatever it is that you believe in, there's no amount of money that will change that. And that, you never know in life where there will be a big amount of money if you, um, you know, reward if you do certain things that maybe go against your moral code. And you never know. That could happen. And so you do whatever you think is right if you believe in it. Sorry, my vocal cords are still, I'm having a rough morning. But anyways, so that was the DeLorean test, the weatherman test to see if you're if and put deep thought into it. And again, this might take you a year, 6 months to really think through certain aspects, but then it becomes a core principle for you that you're not going to bend or break. And you've seen that throughout history. Some important people that stand on principle regardless of the outcome to themselves. And so it's not for everybody, but for some of us, you will feel strongly enough about something. So the DeLorean weatherman test is one thing. Now, the other thing I thought I'd end was something kind of fun that, I really enjoyed fishing with my father. Was one of, like a really great experience as a kid. And then I thought, wow, with my kids, when they were about, God, they were teenagers, but young teenagers. And I thought, wow, I never got this experience with them because obviously if I'm not going to kill a fish, and I don't believe in catch and release because I don't believe in torture, it's like, oh, let's do a little, like, oh, it doesn't hurt that one. Okay, whatever, man. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. Like, you believe what you want to believe, but I'll do the same. But anyways, I'm like, I really enjoyed that time with my father, and I would like to enjoy that with my twins. And so what I did is I just went and I bought us all fishing gear, the whole 9 yards. Like, it was so silly. I should have just rented it, but I just bought a bunch of stuff, the tackle boxes, the poles, the everything but the hooks. And so we went down to the Redondo Pier and we went fishing and just casting it off. And the thing was, that was fun. Like, I think they had a good time. I had a good time. And we got to have that fishing experience of, casting it out and reeling it in. But no one was harmed and no one was going to get harmed. And so if you ever hear me saying fishing without hooks, that's what the reference is so you can still enjoy things without, you know, without hurting stuff. And so I said earlier, one of my favorite things was going to In and Out and having a double double. And then years into being a vegetarian and thinking that there was nothing I could eat there but fries, someone told me, oh, what about the secret menu? And you could have a grilled cheese animal style, and there's no meat involved. Now, there was cheese and dairy, but no meat. And then so that changed everything for me. So just think through, like, you don't have to sacrifice for the sake of your moral thing. You can still enjoy things as long as it still goes along with your moral compass, like fishing without hooks, or in my case, going and having something without the meat. Like, you don't have to have a terrible life just because you want to stand on principle. But again, this was study people who've stood on principle over history. And I think you'll find that they all had something in common, which was their own moral compass. Might not be pointed in the same direction as yours, but still a moral compass. So anyways, that's all I wanted to add to it. So now back to the program. And I'm not going to make this a habit because every show that I tape afterwards, I'm like, oh, I should have said this, this, and this. But this one was special to me. And so I hope you all dig it. And with that said, next week, I will be putting normal one on. I won't have another non-stock related one until I think March 2nd ish. So that is going to be one on, how I ended up getting healthy and losing well over 80 pounds in a short period of time and you know, other things, but that'll be my next non-stock related one. So there's a lot of time between now and then before I get into that. So with that said, go be kind and peace out.